and welcome to Congress in Context.
Glad to be here.
Today, we're pulling back the curtain using a really specific document, the official Congressional Record from Friday, June 13th, 2025.
That's right. This isn't, news commentary. This is the actual formal journal that Congress itself produces. It records what happened or what was officially submitted in the House and Senate.
And our mission really is to take this one day's record, think of it like a core sample maybe, and use it to understand Congress in context. What does the official account, even for what seems like a quiet day, tell us about how things actually work on the Hill?
Yeah, it's about looking at what gets put down for the historical record, for the big procedures to, individual member actions.
Okay, let's dive into this June 13th record then. Maybe start with the formal business, or perhaps the lack of it on the floor.
A distinct lack, definitely in the House. The record shows the House of Representatives convened at 9:30 a.m.
And this is where it gets kind of wild, right? Because it then says they adjourned at 9:32 a.m. That's, what, 2 minutes?
2 minutes total floor time. Yeah, strikingly brief. But, even in those 2 minutes, the required formalities were observed and recorded.
Like, what happens in 2 minutes?
Well, the record notes the designation of the Speaker pro tempore, that was Mr. Adrian Smith of Nebraska, appointed by Speaker Johnson.
Okay.
There was the prayer offered by the chaplain, Reverend Margaret Grenkibbin.
Right.
And the record actually includes the text of her prayer themes of faith, trust, standard stuff, but recorded. They also approved the journal from the previous day. That's a routine procedural step.
And the Pledge of Allegiance, I assume?
Yep, led by the Speaker pro tempore. All the essential opening bits done and dusted in 2 minutes. Then, the record states the House adjourned until Tuesday, June 17th at 11 a.m.
And it specifically mentions that Tuesday session will be pro forma. What does that mean exactly?
Okay, so pro forma just means as a matter of form. There's a constitutional rule that one chamber can't adjourn for more than 3 days without the other's consent. So these pro forma sessions are often super brief, like this Friday one was. They technically meet, fulfill the requirement, gavel in, gavel out, usually means members are back in their districts or doing other work.
So it's like ticking a constitutional box, basically.
Pretty much. It keeps the continuity legally, but don't expect major debates or votes in a pro forma session. It's activity for the record, not substantive floor action.
Got it. So the House was barely there. What about the Senate on June 13th?
Even quieter. The Senate wasn't in session at all that Friday.
Okay, so really a minimal floor day for Congress overall.
In terms of public floor activity, absolutely minimal. But the record does give us a heads up about what's coming next for the Senate. It notes they're scheduled to meet next on Monday, June 16th at 4 p.m.
And it says what they plan to do.
It does. It specifically lists a vote on the motion to invoke cloture on the nomination of Gary Andrus of Virginia to be an Assistant Secretary of Health and Human Services.
Cloture. That sounds procedural. For folks who don't follow this daily, what is that?
Right. Cloture is the mechanism the Senate uses to end debate on something, a bill, a nomination, and actually move to a final vote.
Needs a certain number of votes?
Usually 60 votes, yeah. So seeing a cloture vote scheduled tells you this nomination probably has some opposition, or at least someone intends to debate it at length and filibuster it. Leadership is scheduling this vote to try and force an end to the debate and get to the actual confirmation vote.
So even on a quiet Friday, the record points to upcoming procedural battles.
Exactly. And it also notes no Senate committee meetings happened on Friday either. So floor was quiet, committees were quiet, but the schedule for next week shows things are moving.
Okay, so the record confirms the basic procedures happened, even briefly, and flags upcoming procedural stuff like that cloture vote.
It captures the basic rhythm, the institutional gears turning, even when there's no big show on the floor.
All right, let's move beyond the almost invisible floor action on this particular day. The record captures a lot of other activity, doesn't it? Like planting seeds for future laws.
That's a great way to put it. We see that in the section Public Bills and Resolutions Introduced. This is where members formally submit their new legislative ideas.
And even on this Friday, with the House meeting for 2 minutes and the Senate out, there were new bills.
Oh, yeah. 7 new House bills, H.R. 4009 through 4015, plus a new joint resolution and a new simple resolution.
7 bills, 2 resolutions. Wow. That tells you something right there.
It really does. It shows that introducing ideas is continuous. It's not tied just to when they're debating on the floor. And the range of topics just on this one day is, well, pretty vast.
Like what kind of things?
Well, you had H.R. 4009 from Mr. Issa and Mrs. Ross dealing with technical copyright stuff, works incorporated by reference into law. Very specific.
Okay.
Then H.R. 4010 from Mr. Bell and Mr. Graves focused on defense contracting, prohibiting DoD contracts with certain foreign-owned online tutoring services.
Interesting.
Then you pivot to domestic health with H.R. 4011 from Mr. Cleaver and Mrs. Harshbarger, notably bipartisan authorizing grants for rural community paramedicine programs.
Paramedicine. Okay. What else?
H.R. 4012 from Mr. Moore of North Carolina, directing the FAA to study airport readiness for high-speed air travel. Then H.R. 4013 from Ms. Norton, which we'll probably talk about more later, about flying the flag at half-staff for the D.C. mayor.
Right.
Another bipartisan one, H.R. 4014 from Mr. Nunn and Mr. Riley, establishing criminal penalties for recklessly handling dangerous agricultural pathogens. And H.R. 4015, also bipartisan, from Mr. Rouser and Mr. Edwards, about penalties for interfering with commerce by blocking roads.
That's quite a mix. Copyright, defense, rural health, aviation, DC issues, pathogens, road blocking.
Exactly. It's a real cross-section.
Yeah.
And beyond the bills, there was H.A. Res. 101, a joint resolution from Mr. Womack and quite a few co-sponsors, proposing a constitutional amendment about prohibiting flag desecration.
A constitutional amendment introduced. That's always significant.
Absolutely. And finally, H.Res. 515, a simple resolution, very bipartisan, from Mr. McCall, Mr. McGovern, and others, commemorating the Dalai Lama's 90th birthday and supporting the Tibetan people.
So foreign affairs in there too. What's really important, though, and the record shows this for each one, is where they go next, right? The committee referral.
Crucial point, yes. The record specifies the committee for each one: Judiciary, Armed Services, Energy and Commerce, Transportation, Foreign Affairs. That referral is the first formal step.
That's where the actual work might happen. Hearings, markups.
If the bill gets any traction, yes. The committee is where these ideas get examined, debated, maybe changed, maybe ignored. It's the initial sorting mechanism, so the record tracks that destination.
So even on a super quiet Friday, the pipeline of new legislative ideas is being filled, and we can see exactly where those ideas are initially routed.
The input is constant, that's clear.
The record also does something else related to these introductions, right? It makes members state why they think Congress even has the power to legislate on these things.
Yes, the constitutional authority statement. It's required under House rules for every bill and joint resolution introduced. Members have to cite the specific part of the Constitution that they believe grants Congress the power to enact that law.
And that's not just checking a box, is it? It's their formal justification.
It is. It's their legal rationale right there in the record. You see different citations depending on the bill. For instance, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 18, that's the necessary and proper clause. It's pretty broad.
You probably saw that cited for a few of these.
Likely, yes. And you also see things like Article 1, Section 8, Clause 3, the Commerce Clause. That's huge. It gives Congress the power to regulate commerce among the states.
So for that bill about agricultural pathogens, for example.
They'd likely cite the Commerce Clause, arguing that dangerous pathogens moving across state lines affects interstate commerce, giving Congress the authority to regulate their handling.
Makes sense. And for the constitutional amendment.
The authority cited there would be Article V, which is the part of the Constitution that specifically outlines the process for proposing amendments. So each citation links the bill back to a specific source of congressional power, as interpreted by the sponsor.
It adds that layer of sort of legal grounding to the whole process right from the start.
Documents the legitimacy argument up front, exactly.
Okay, so new ideas get introduced, justified constitutionally, but the record also tracks support for things already in the system, right?
Yes, absolutely. You see that in the additional sponsor section. After a bill is introduced, other members can add their names to it to show they support it.
And the record for June 13th listed members adding their names to bills that were already out there.
Yep. It listed additional sponsors for several existing bills and resolutions. Things like H.R. 833, H.R. 2799, H.Res. 509, and others. It's a way to gauge if an idea is picking up steam or attracting broader support over time.
A passive way to see momentum building, maybe?
Kind of. And then there's a more active mechanism also noted in the record, discharge petitions.
Ah, yes. These are used when a bill is stuck in committee.
Exactly. In the House, the committee isn't acting on a bill. Members can sign a discharge petition. If they get 218 signatures, a majority of the House, the petition can force the bill out of committee and onto the floor for a vote, basically bypassing the committee chair.
So seeing names added to discharge petitions signals a real push.
It does. It shows an active effort to move something that's likely stalled. The June 13th record shows members adding their names to two petitions, Petition 4 and Petition 5, both started by Mr. Meeks, related to HRS 391 and HRS 393.
And there was a list of members signing on.
A significant list, yes. Seeing that tells you there's an organized effort underway, probably trying to overcome resistance from committee leadership or leadership in general. It's a sign of internal pressure building.
So, wow. Even without floor votes, the record shows new ideas, the justification, the slow build of support, and these active pushes to force action. It's quite a bit happening under the surface.
You get visibility into multiple stages of the legislative life cycle happening all at once, yeah. Even when the public focus isn't there.
Okay, let's shift gears a bit. There's another whole section of the record, the extensions of remarks, which feels, I don't know, more personal sometimes.
That's a good way to describe it. These are statements that members submit formally to be printed in the record, but they usually aren't spoken on the floor.
What kind of things go in there?
All sorts. Honoring constituents, recognizing local events or anniversaries, sometimes inserting newspaper articles or reports they think are important, or providing extra context for a bill they introduced.
So it's a way for members to use the official journal to highlight things important to them or their district.
Exactly. It's part of their representative role, making sure local stories, achievements, and perspectives become part of the permanent national record.
And this June 13th record had some really interesting examples. Mr. Joseph Morrell from New York submitted several, right? Focusing on Caribbean American Heritage Month.
He did. He honored several individuals from Rochester, people like Jerome Underwood, cited for social justice work and being a youth mentor, Norma Tom, a community leader and co-founder of the Rochester West Indian Festival, Marlene Henry, recognized for using her catering business for community service.
Wow.
Roosevelt Moraes, who rose from being a security guard to lead an educational opportunity center and founded an orphanage in Haiti. And Rose Bonnick, a county legislator known as a community connector, especially helping Jamaican immigrants.
Those are amazing individual stories, and they're now officially part of the Congressional Record.
Yeah, it shows members using that platform very intentionally to celebrate people in their communities.
Who else was recognized?
Mr. Benny Thompson of Mississippi honored Don Hewitt, described as a trailblazer in sustainable urban development in Jackson, focusing on mixed-use projects, community needs, and even using AI in planning.
And then Ms. Eleanor Holmes Norton, the delegate from D.C., she used her extension to talk about that bill she introduced, H.R. 4013.
Yes. She submitted a statement laying out her rationale for why the flag should be flown at half-staff for the D.C. mayor upon their death. She argued the mayor has responsibilities like a governor, and this change is about equal treatment for D.C.
Did she give examples?
She did. The record includes her citing things like the D.C. coin, D.C. statues in the Capitol, the D.C. flag display, building her case for why this seemingly small step fits into a larger push for D.C. equality. It basically puts her legislative intent on the record.
So it becomes part of the bill's history, in a way.
A very direct way, yes.
We also saw something called a personal explanation. What's that?
That was from Mr. Richard Hudson of North Carolina. A personal explanation is how members formally state for the record why they missed votes and, crucially, how they would have voted.
Okay.
Mr. Hudson stated he was unavoidably detained at Fort Bragg in his district, missed 4 specific roll call votes, numbers 160 through 163, and that he would have voted YEA on all of them.
So it preserves their voting intention even if they weren't there.
Right. It's about accountability and making sure their position is clear in the record.
And one more, Mr. Dan Newhouse from Washington State.
He submitted remarks honoring the USS Triton, the first submarine to circumnavigate the globe submerged back in the Cold War era, and also recognizing the Port of Benton for establishing a memorial park for the Triton in Richland, connecting naval history to local recognition.
These extensions really do add a different dimension. It shows Congress isn't just this abstract lawmaking body. It's connected to real people, local history, community pride.
Absolutely. It reflects that multifaceted job description for a member of Congress. They legislate, yes, but they also represent, celebrate, and commemorate things important to their constituents.
So let's try to connect the dots here. We took this deep dive into just one day, June 13th, 2025. What does this snapshot, this core sample, really tell us about Congress in context?
Well, first, it hammers home that even on days with almost zero public floor activity, that 2-minute House session being a prime example, the basic formal procedures of the institution are still happening, still being followed, still being recorded.
Check the boxes, keep the gears moving.
Right. Second, we learned that the introduction of new legislative ideas is absolutely constant. It happens every day, covering this incredible range of topics. It shows what's on members' minds, what they're hearing from constituents, and that committee referral is the key first step in the process.
Committees as the initial gatekeepers or maybe incubators.
Something like that. Third, we saw how the record tracks the justification for laws, those constitutional authority statements, and also how it shows support building, whether it's passively through adding sponsors or actively through things like discharge petitions.
So it captures different kinds of legislative energy.
Exactly. And fourth, and I think this is really important, a huge chunk of the official record isn't even about legislation per se, but about members using extensions of remarks to weave local stories, constituent achievements, and district history into the national narrative.
It adds that human element, that local connection.
It really does. It shows Congress as this place where everything from proposing a constitutional amendment to celebrating a community volunteer in Rochester gets formally documented side by side.
It definitely paints a picture of Congress as, well, a much more complex place than just what you see on TV debates. Multiple layers of activity, much of it pretty invisible to the casual observer.
That's a great way to put it. Now, we have to acknowledge the limits, right? This was one day. We didn't see big floor debates because there weren't any. We didn't see votes happening, except for that one personal explanation.
And we don't see the backroom dealing or the committee arguments.
No, the record is formal. It doesn't capture the informal negotiations or the detailed work within committees. But what this single day does show us very clearly is the formal structure, the constant influx of ideas, the ways support is tracked, and this really vital representative function of linking Congress back to communities across the country.
It shows that Congress is always working, always moving, even when it looks quiet from the outside.
It reveals the sheer variety of ways members are doing their jobs simultaneously.
So here's a thought to leave you with. Considering this huge range of activity, new laws proposed on everything from copyright to pathogens, local heroes being honored, constitutional powers being cited, procedures being followed, all crammed into the official record of just one seemingly uneventful Friday. What does that complexity really tell us about the sheer scale and the different dimensions of representation happening in Congress every single day?
It's definitely something to think about, the constant flow beneath the surface.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into Congress in context, looking at the Congressional Record from June 13th, 2025.